Okay, good morning, everyone, and happy snow day or snowstorm. There's lots of things going on in our world in this December 2020. But one thing that's good is that we are having our meeting despite a record snowfall. So hello, everyone. Welcome to our December GIC meeting. I see a lot of friendly faces around the cameras. I do miss seeing all of you. And I look forward to a time when we're back together. So I'd like to welcome Cassandra Roeder, who is filling in for Secretary Heffernan. So welcome, Cassandra. And we also have another new face around the table, Erica Shabelli. So welcome, Erica. You're going to hear from Matt Vino, our Executive Director. Welcome, Erica, to our team. So I want to start off the meeting with a vote on minutes. So for commissioners, have you had a chance to review the minutes? And do I have a motion to approve the minutes from our November meeting?
So moved.
So moved. Oh.
So
I second that motion.
Okay, great. Nice to see you, Bobby. Thank you for that motion, and Christy to second it. So we're going to go around with our council. Andrew will take a roll call. So go ahead, Andrew. Floor is yours.
Commissioner Valerie Sullivan, Chair Sullivan.
Yeah. Yes.
Commissioner Kaplan.
Yes.
Designee Roeder.
I'll abstain
Assume
since
you
I
abstain,
wasn't
yes.
present for the last meeting. Yeah.
Designee Butler.
Yes.
Commissioner Chapdelaine.
Yes.
Commissioner Choate.
Yes.
Commissioner Clenard.
Yes.
Commissioner Davis.
Aye.
Commissioner Edmonds.
Yes.
Commissioner McEnany.
Yes.
Commissioner Jennings.
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy Rodriguez.
Yes.
Commissioner Sinenko.
Yes.
And Commissioner Timothy Sullivan.
Yes.
It's everybody I have, which makes it unanimous.
All right. Thank you, Andrew. So at this point, unless there's any commentary from
excuse me, with one abstention.
Yes. There you go, Andrew. Thank you for that correction. So if there are no other comments or commentary for our commissioners, I'm going to turn it over to Matt Vino.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If we can move to slide 4 for the calendar. Great. For the Executive Director's report. Thank you, Madam Chair, and welcome commissioners and who are joining us by Zoom, and welcome to the public joining us by YouTube. As Valerie noted, we would not be able to meet today if we were in our old way of doing business, meeting in person without a virtual opportunity. So one of the benefits of this capability that we've put in place. This will actually be the first time that the GIC team will be fully remote with the exception of yours truly. So our technical team, which we have typically wanted to have on site in the office to make sure that we don't lose a connection. Of course, we can't do that today. And we did brief commissioners just as we were entering the call, but just to let the public know as well that if we do have if the storm causes someone to lose power on our team or lose the capability to proceed with the slide deck or anything like that, we will essentially take a 10-minute break. We'll take down the Zoom session and the YouTube and reboot it. So I would ask folks that if that happens, to commissioners to log on within 10 minutes, and for the public to follow along on YouTube by probably just waiting for it to come back. So we have backup plans in place to handle that possibility. I do want to say too that if we lose the YouTube broadcast, I think, but the commission is still able to reconvene on Zoom. I think the commission can decide how to proceed there. I think under the rules, Andrew can correct me, we would be able to still proceed with the meeting and then post the recording or the transcript of the meeting subsequent to the meeting. But we would leave that to the commission to decide how you want to proceed. So we have a number of, what I want you to hear is we have a number of protocols in place here in case we can't proceed with the meeting. So with that, we can go to the next slide, please. We have a really busy agenda today, as you can see in the red box here. But before we get into that, I do want to say just a few quick words. In a normal year, most of us at this time of year would be looking forward to what we do every holiday season. Time indoors, in from the cold, time with family and friends, huddling indoors, eating, drinking, and just generally being merry. And these are the things that make the holiday time, of course, so special. But I think we also need to recognize and understand that these are precisely the sorts of activities that spread COVID. So I'm sure others saw the governor's press conference earlier this week, where he described what happened with Thanksgiving and trends for positivity rates and admissions and hospitalizations and ICU admissions were really leveling off, but largely due to the holidays and gathering during the holidays, we did see a substantial spike in cases after the holidays. So I just want to stress just the public health message that others of my colleagues in state government are stressing, which is just be careful, practice all of your COVID behaviors, wear a mask, social distance. And I would just urge folks to think about the frontline healthcare workers. Let's not make their lives more difficult. Think about the small businesses that are really struggling to keep their businesses afloat. The end is in sight. The vaccine is on the horizon. We just need to get through a couple more months. So I just want to make sure that I echo that public health message that others are echoing.
Matt, really well said. Thank you. Really well said. Thank you.
So for the calendar today, we have a number of items, and this puts it in the context of where we've been and where we're going over the last few months and the few months that lie ahead of us. Today, we'll start the process in the purple set of purple boxes here, where we're providing a brief presentation about the preliminary numbers for FY22 rates, which will continue over the next several meetings. We will have a brief presentation on kind of COVID-19 data. You don't see that here, but that will be a brief look at the data there. We'll hear a really exciting update on the ongoing modernization work of the agency from our ops and IT teams. We'll hear from our outside plan auditor, who's looked at 3 of our 6 health plans, and we'll note some findings and some items that we need to correct going forward with them. And then we'll have a vote on the dental and vision procurement, in addition to, I think, what will be a brief conversation and vote on our amendments to our regulation. Next slide. So these are just a couple of brief standard items that we update the commission on in the area of communications. Linnea Walsh, our communications director, has been busy working with our EAP vendor, putting out a number of helpful messages to GIC employees and their dependents. Last month, we put out earlier this month, a message about dealing with holiday stress. Especially in the time of a pandemic, which adds a new layer of stress. I would say that the open rate and click-through rate of this communication was as high as we've seen, which is encouraging, especially given recent trends there. So that's good news. Next month, we'll have a message about financial wellness tips as you start off the new year, promoting good financial habits, presumably as New Year's resolutions, among others. And we've also had a series of virtual webinars that focus on issues such as maintaining resilience during a challenging time, making the most of a very difficult holiday, and a few others. So, and even there, the participation seems to be ticking up a bit, which is great. Also, just a quick reminder, our 2020 annual report is well under development, and we hope to be getting that out to you soon. On the legislation and municipality side, I think folks who pay attention to these things will note that the FY21 state budget was enacted, and though there were some line items that were vetoed by the governor and being taken up by the legislature, they don't affect the GIC or our budget. Jim Rust, a little bit later in the agenda, will give us an update there, but I think the headline is that we essentially have what we need as an organization to proceed through the rest of this fiscal year. And on the municipal side, the portfolio remains steady, unchanged. We had in December was another deadline for municipalities with an intention to leave the GIC would need to notify us. We did not receive any such notifications, so pretty steady as she goes there. On legislation, there is still in conference in the legislature a healthcare bill with some implications around telehealth for the GIC, but prospects for that are a little uncertain at this point. Any questions on those? Next slide. So we do have, actually, what I want to do as a matter of routine going forward with the commission is whenever we have a new staff or retirement from staff or significant departure, I do want to note that to the commission. And since we last met, we do have two new employees. Erica Shabelli, as our chair noted at the beginning of the meeting, has just joined us on Monday as our deputy executive director. And I don't know if Erica's got the capability to sort of say a few words, but I'd like to welcome her to do that. I've known Erica for probably 7 or 8 years. She's got a great background in a number of different venues as it relates to healthcare and healthcare policy, and really looking forward to having her become a kind of core member of the team.
Good morning. I am here and I do have the capability to unmute myself. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me, and I'm excited for the work ahead.
Yeah. So Erica, do you want to just say a few words about your background? Because I was truly impressed by it.
Thank you. Sure. So I started off, Senator Jim Welch hired me right after I graduated from law school, and was kind of introduced to healthcare. I was trial by fire when he was appointed to be the chair of healthcare financing about 3 months after I started there. Following my time with the senator, I went to the Health Policy Commission as their government affairs manager and was promoted to deputy chief of staff. After the Health Policy Commission, I went to the Cannabis Control Commission as their chief of staff to assist them and my good friend Sean Collins in standing up the agency and the industry as well. And now I'm excited to be back in the healthcare realm, working with Matt. So thank you very much for having me.
That's great. Thank you, Erica. Welcome. I do see Commissioner Clenard has her hand up. So hi, Christy, you have the floor.
Thanks, Valerie, and welcome, Erica. Matt, I just wanted to go back to you talking about municipalities, that it's steady as she goes. Has there been any interest in anyone joining? Has that kind of gotten put on hold with the pandemic?
I would say, so no, we haven't gotten significant interest. We occasionally hear, we might get like an inquiry, like a soft inquiry, and we do typically get those. We did get a few of those, but there are next steps that a municipality would have to take that would indicate a more a stronger interest in joining, and we really haven't seen much of that either. So my sense of it is that and I think this is also the case on the commercial side of insurance that a lot of plan sponsors, a lot of employers are standing pat, staying with their current coverage, and not taking on what would have to be, you know, in many cases, a substantial administrative lift to switch carriers. And I just think I defer to your colleagues and commissioners on the commission, Adam and Melissa, but that is my sense that they just have their hands plenty full right now.
I can certainly attest to that. Yes.
I do think Commissioner Clenard makes an excellent point. If there was a time potentially in the coming year for somebody at the staff level, GIC, to look at other municipalities, working with Melissa and Adam on how do we get more municipalities in, maybe, you know, a plan for, you know, 2022 or 2023, because that is one way to ensure that our clout in the marketplace is strong if we keep adding members. So I'm glad Commissioner Clenard brought it up. So thank you. And Matt, I'm sure you'll put that pin in it, maybe for somebody to look at in the new year.
Yeah, actually, and the slide in front of us is what I would refer to, which is, you know, our municipal strategy is one of the items that I'll be working closely with a Deputy Executive Director, Erica Shabelli, to develop, working with Mike Berry, who's been working on that issue for a number of years here. I just want to note one other employee as well who's joined the GIC, Martha DeSell, who comes to our operations team as an operations support specialist. She came from Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare, where she was working in the member services area. So we're happy to have Martha join the team. Next slide. So we talked a little bit at the November commission about our thoughts about how we would approach the public information sessions this year. Of course, last year we were able to host in-person public information sessions. We will not be able to do that this year. So we are planning on a fully virtual round of public information sessions. I would remind commissioners that the information sessions are important this time of year because they fit right into those purple squares on our calendar where we're preparing rates and we are considering as a commission any potential plan design changes to mitigate rate increases, and then approving rates in March. So we want to, as part of that process, present what we know to the public and give them an opportunity to share their thoughts and priorities as we head through that process. So here we are proposing a number of dates towards the end of January. As you can see, we've tried different days, different times of the day, mornings, evenings. We even included a Saturday here. So we're trying to give plenty of opportunity for individuals to participate. As we have talked about and done in the past, we will make the presentation that we make at the information session available to the public ahead of the event, and make recordings of those events available as video on our website subsequent to the event. So this is kind of our straw man and what we're planning towards. I know the commission has had a great deal of interest in this topic in the past, so I do want to pause to see if commissioners have reactions, suggestions, or observations of any type.
I just want to say how terrific it is that we have this virtual platform strategy for next month to collect information from our members and our constituents. And so I want to ask all of my colleagues who are working with, the agencies overseeing these constituents, Bobby, Tim, Kevin, Liz. I'm sure I'm going to forget somebody, but you know how important your constituents think these feedback sessions are. So please get the word out. It's virtual. The information's available. And I would encourage both positive and, opportunities for improvement during these sessions. So really good work. I know you were forced to do this, Matt, but at the same time, delivering on this is really impressive. So thanks.
Thank you.
I have a question, or a request perhaps. I was looking at the dates and actually, more importantly, the hours that the session's going to be held. And I would ask that there be another one added for maybe noon to 1:30, like during lunch break when people are working, and then they can log off and log on, because it is different with so many people teleworking, but everyone has a lunch break, typically somewhere between 12 and 2. And so I think it's really important to accommodate a lot of people who may be unable, at 5:30 to attend any listening sessions.
That's a great point. Thank you, Bobby. We will add that.
And then
Thank you.
Tim also has a comment or a question.
One of
And
my
then
comments.
Anna.
One of my comments, Valerie, you kind of touched upon. I was concerned about how this was going to be publicized. It's true that those of us who have constituencies that we represent will get the word out, but I was also wondering from Matt, what is the GIC going to do on their side as well to get the word out? And also, I wanted to make sure that for those who couldn't participate at these particular times, first of all, I'm glad to see one late in the afternoon, as many teachers don't have an opportunity to participate until then. And I've talked about that in years past, so I'm glad to see that we have some late in the afternoon. But I also want to make sure, as we have done in the past, and I know I mentioned this last month, but I just want to reiterate it, that I hope there'll be an opportunity, some type of link, email address for those who can't participate but might have the opportunity to view the presentation at a later date, to be able to send in their comments electronically if they can't participate during the forum.
Nice. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, we will definitely do that. Thank you, Tim. And we'll have more to say. The kind of communications effort around informing people, members about these sessions is under development now. So we'll be sure to follow up with commissioners with some more detail by email over the coming week or two.
Yeah, and Matt, I wonder if it makes sense. I know I follow the GIC on LinkedIn. I don't know if we have, I don't know if LinkedIn is the best for our members. Do we have a Facebook page for them? Do we have, I'm going to date myself, Instagram? Like what is our way to engage our members? And, potentially at our next meeting, from Commissioner Sullivan's feedback, what about if we got some sort of strategy for, what is our member engagement approach? And, how often are we posting to Facebook and to Instagram to let people know that, the virtual platform is being recorded? And I will stop talking because I know you'll take that under advisement. I know Commissioner Sinenko has her hand up, so I'll pass the floor to her.
Thank you, Valerie. And I think this is just great. I love that you are offering these at different times and like the suggestion of the lunchtime. So I think that's great. I just was going to ask or mention that I think some of the work on accessing virtual events has shown that telephone is as important as video, and a lot of people really only have access via telephone. And so do you have, I assume that the Zoom capability will have both phone and video, but just wanted to make that point and raise it in case you guys haven't thought through the access via telephone.
Yes, that is our part of our plan, is to provide telephone only capability to provide comments.
Hey, Bobby, do you still have a
Yes.
question?
Yes, I have another
Okay.
question.
That's okay.
Which is, after each listening session, I don't know, it might be too difficult after each one, since they're literally, one day after the next, but it would be, I would really appreciate like having a list of all the questions that people have asked during the listening sessions. I think it would be important for the commissioners before we vote in, particularly about the plan design in February, that we fully understand the concerns and the questions that our, membership has.
Yeah, it's a really good point, Bobby, and we will certainly do that. My thought is that we would collect them after the last session and provide them as a resource to commissioners in advance of the February meeting. I think it, as you point out, probably a little ambitious, but I think we can do that. And that really would, that's the point of holding the sessions, is for us to gather that input, not only for our benefit at the staff level, but for your benefit as commissioners. So we will commit to do that.
Thank you.
Let's move on.
Great, thank you. That's a really helpful discussion. Really appreciate that. COVID-19, so there's a lot to discuss here, and I don't want to get too, we have a lot on our agenda, but I do want to highlight a few items here, because it still is a major impact in many areas here at the GIC. So in terms of GIC operations, I'll be brief. We continue to operate essentially fully remotely, with the exception of a handful of staff who do come into the office on a staggered schedule, folks in the mailroom and a few folks in the finance area, and then a few on the senior team from time to time on the operations side, if there's a big mailing or something like that. But we have been super, super careful about how we do that, so as not to, inadvertently or without care, sort of expose our staff to the virus. So we intend to continue to operate remotely through the end of February, right through our move, really. And as I've said before, remote telework will be a permanent core feature of our work environment going forward. So that's all I'll say about that. We are thinking through now quite a bit, planning, gearing up for our FY22 annual enrollment for the spring. And we're doing it now so that we don't have to scramble later on in the year, as we did last year, as COVID hit just before annual enrollment. So we know this year's annual enrollment is gonna be characterized by a similar environment. We have to think through how we can adequately provide the necessary information to our members to prepare for annual enrollment. We'll be doing digital benefit guides as we did last year, but we also need to think through how we engage with those who would, in a normal environment, attend a benefit fair. There are always there's a certain layer of the GIC membership that needs that one-on-one guidance. So we are thinking through how to meet that need while keeping people safe. We at the GIC, we also I think it was last month, extended the waiver of member cost sharing for telehealth services. So this was a step that we took back in March, actually just before I arrived at the GIC, to waive cost sharing for all telehealth services, not just COVID-19 related services, as a way of preserving access to necessary care across the board. So we were presented with some carriers who were inquiring about that. So we made it clear that that will continue through the end of March. Telehealth continues to be really a lifesaver for a lot of people, maintaining access to necessary services, particularly behavioral health services, which are especially needed during this time. We've also spent a great deal of time just over the last couple of weeks exploring our role as it relates to vaccine distribution. There's a complicated landscape of federal and state requirements, a complicated set of considerations for us about just to make sure that we don't have a circumstance in which someone receives a vaccine and they inadvertently are liable to cost sharing, a copay, or for some reason get it from a provider that's not in network with their health plan. So there's a lot of different possible gaps here, and we made the decision just yesterday actually to instruct our carriers to cover in full the administration of the COVID vaccine with no cost sharing, irrespective of the site of administration or whether the provider administering the vaccine is in network or out of network. So what we are essentially is just taking off the board any consideration for our members that they will be subject to any financial obligation as it relates to the vaccine. It's just too important to not to do that. So we're actually a little bit on the front end of providing that sort of guidance. So as I said, we instructed our carriers as much yesterday, and we will be instructing our GIC coordinators and our members very soon.
Hey, Matt.
Yep.
Kudos to the GIC. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I
No.
echo that. I echo that. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I know. I think it is wonderful as well. So thanks, commissioners. I see that Eileen has her hand up. So Eileen, you have the floor.
I do. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Matt, I just wanted to commend you for, your proactive thinking with respect to the vaccine and telehealth, and just offer the Mass Health Quality Partners, Barbara Rapson's group, has done an enormous amount of work on telehealth and has surveyed folks. And I thought the results were somewhat surprising. For instance, the mass health population is using telehealth more than the commercially insured or folks who get it through their employers. And so I would just encourage you to collaborate with them to better understand when you're thinking about policies surrounding telehealth.
Thank you, Eileen. It's a great point. And I'm afraid we're a step ahead of you. Actually, Barbara Rapson reached out to us a few weeks ago and wanted to engage on this specific topic. And she did an extensive debrief on the findings of their surveys to date. And as you noted, some really interesting, a lot of interesting findings that I wouldn't quite have expected. So we're actually, we have our ear to the ground on telemedicine in a lot of different areas. And I think one of the things that we want to specifically understand better, and this is where I think MHQP can really be helpful, is the evidence behind what's working in telehealth. So for some services, it's a proven channel for delivering effective care. In the behavioral health space, certainly is that. We have made specific accommodations, particularly with an equity lens here, to telephone-only telemedicine. And I think that is a little bit more, actually Ken Duckworth from Blue Cross Blue Shield, I think, said that that's more of a leap of faith, that there's not a lot of research into the effectiveness of telehealth delivered only by telephone. Yet you have to acknowledge that, there are some in our community who don't have access to the kind of technology that would allow them to be on this sort of a platform, for instance. So particularly from providers in the community health centers and others serving underserved communities, that's a consideration. So there's a lot to learn here, a great natural experiment, but we're looking for lessons on where telehealth adds the most value to our members as a permanent feature going forward. Thank you for that comment.
And it's no surprise that you're one step ahead of me. But the only other thing I would say is, there was an interesting conversation at an MHQP meeting, and from the provider's perspective, Zoom or another platform may not be ideal for what they're trying to do. They talked about handoffs. Like if you went to their office, you might see someone who checks you in and takes your blood pressure, and then the doctor, would see you after that. And these platforms aren't set up for that yet, but I think telehealth is in its infancy. And so there's a lot of exciting opportunity along with a lot of challenges. Anyway.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
No, those are good comments, Eileen. Hey, Bobby, I see you have your hand up.
Yes. So I was wondering if you would be able to share the results of that survey with us.
Yes, I'm sure we can subsequent to the meeting. I'm assuming that research is final. I'd be happy to circulate that to the commission.
That'd be great.
Thank you. And probably some
Yeah.
other things too. I know the Health Policy Commission did a roundtable on this recently. The Mass Association of Health Plans. There's been some really interesting forums that I'm sure the commission would be interested in, and I'll track down those resources and we'll get them out to you.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
I think, Matt, for time's sake, we should move on.
Yep.
I know that you're a step ahead of me in this area as well, but I would ask not just for the information on telehealth and providers' viewpoints and patients' viewpoints, but also bring in the health plans and see if there's a way that we can drive down costs by increasing telehealth, but also our member satisfaction. To me, I feel like the data will show that, but I'd like to see, the connectivity of, all the work that's being done in telehealth to, increase quality and drive down costs. Because it's great if telehealth is being embraced, but if it just drives up cost, again, that's a story we've all seen. And it would be helpful if it's just not, the same old story.
Yeah, this is a fascinating topic, and I think what we can do is try to find an opportunity sometime in the next few meetings to do a real deep dive on all the various dimensions of telehealth, including that. All
right, so just for time's sake, let's keep moving.
Okay, that's it for the executive director's report. Unless there are further questions, maybe I should pause to see if there are any further questions on any of that stuff. None.
No, it's good conversation. Thanks to everybody.
Thank you, commissioners. That's really helpful. Now I'm going to turn it over to Margaret Anschutz, our manager for health data analytics. And I'm hoping to make this an ongoing feature, as I said, of commission meetings. And we'll be looking for your input on what questions you all have about COVID impact on GIC members that we might use our claims data to help answer. And I'll turn it over to Margaret. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. This is a follow-up report to the one presented at the November Commission meeting, with this report focused entirely on demographics. It has an additional month of data with a time period beginning in March and running through July. The report presents both GIC-specific data and high-level Massachusetts-wide data as reported by the Department of Health. Additionally, I've included GIC-specific data on probable COVID cases rather than only confirmed cases. Next slide, please. Here we have high level population data with a comparison between the GIC confirmed cases per 100,000 and the Massachusetts wide confirmed cases per 100,000. Again, this data runs March through July. We see a significantly higher confirmed case rate in the Commonwealth compared to our membership. Next slide, please. This next slide focuses on age band. Here I pulled the probable cases, which you can see in red, as compared to the confirmed cases in blue. Looking at the confirmed cases as well as the probable infection rate in our population, we see a much higher rate of probable diagnoses than confirmed cases across all age groups except the 80+ group. It's likely that this group received more definitive testing as they're high risk. Next slide, please. Now turning to the rate of infection and probable infection by sex, we see that our female members had a higher case rate for both confirmed and probable. We'll need to see how this continues to play out and is explained across the data and population as a whole. But knowing that unpaid caregiving still tends to fall on women, I wonder if that may be a driver of the disparity.
Hey, Margaret.
Yeah.
Toby has a question for you.
Sure, please.
Could you just put a little definition on what probable means?
Sure. So, so confirmed is cases with a PCR test or a molecular test. So someone had a definitive test that was confirmed COVID diagnosis. For a probable case, the definition falls into 4 buckets. That the case, that the patient came in and had, there was clinical evidence of a case, but no test. The second bucket is that there's epidemiological evidence. So, people near them are sick with COVID. The third is that they received an antigen test, and an antigen test basically says, there are antibodies in your system for COVID. And then the fourth bucket that defines a probable case is a death certificate and someone on it being marked that the cause of death was COVID. Is that helpful?
Thank you.
Yeah.
So Margaret, nice job addressing this information. Jane also has a question.
Yes, please.
Yeah, Margaret, do you have a similar chart by people of color?
So that is at the end of this presentation. And again, unfortunately, we don't have that for GIC members, although Matt and Jim and I just met and developed a plan to collect that race ethnicity data for the GIC population. We'll begin implementing that in January, but right now I have I'm just reporting on statewide data. I don't see any reason why our population would be much different from the health disparities in the general Massachusetts population, but that's what I'm reporting on today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Margaret. Keep taking us through this interesting information.
Okay. All right. So on to the next slide. Here we're looking at race ethnicity, Massachusetts wide. So the thing I want to highlight with this slide, this is Massachusetts wide specifically. And the reason I included this slide is because it's a setup for the next slide, which shows the infection rate by race ethnicity. But the important thing to take away here is that unknown column, the red bar, that's about a third of the cases. For whatever reason, the state was not able to collect race ethnicity in the reporting. So this is Massachusetts wide. And again, with the caveat, let's go to the next slide. With the caveat that a third of the population, their race ethnicity data is missing, we still see these gross disparities by race ethnicity. Again, I would suspect that we would see the same thing in our population. And with that, I'm happy to take questions.
Oh, that's great. Yes, Bobby has a question, and I'll look for others who have questions, but I really like the direction of the data, or at least the way you're presenting it, Margaret. So, good work there. Bobby, go ahead. You have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. So it's sort of an astounding number, almost a third, that's sort of unknown.
Yeah.
But I would like to ask regarding race, ethnicity, I'd love to see if you could provide data regarding race, ethnicity, breaking it down by retirees, by age, whether they're active employees and also Black or Hispanic, and within a certain age group. I think it would be really interesting to, sort of, do a really deep dive on the data like that for our population, to see also what we can do perhaps to, I don't know, to provide more wellness or more, I don't know.
I think we've got to have some targeted interventions, and the first step to implementing those interventions is gathering data. And so, I think that's a good point. And the limitation that I'm stuck under right now is that, as I said, we don't have that in our data warehouse right now, the race ethnicity data. So I can't split by the age group. I will be able to, once we get that data in, I'll be able to break it by age, sex, race, ethnicity. And then I'm just, then we'll be able to really come back to the commission and talk about what those targeted, if they're performance guarantees with the health plans, how exactly we're going to get at that, reducing that health disparity.
Right, thank you. And would you be able to, also separate retirees from active? Because I'm curious if, do we need to do more outreach to the retiree population? Which is, what I think anyway. Then let's say the active, or maybe we need to broaden our outreach to retirees without impacting.
I think that's right. And I think it's really important to note, especially with the vaccine and, issues of trust around receiving the vaccine, we see, splitting race ethnicity by age is a way to really have a much more targeted communication plan. And so I'm chomping at the bit to get that data in our system. We're really hopeful about it. Yeah.
And I will note too that there's, in addition, so our priority will be to bring in as much very specific data as we can into our data warehouse. We also have the capability in the interim, and we've already been talking about this with Margaret and Jim, some interim strategies where we can do a better job of imputing race and ethnicity. It's an imperfect science, but there are some ways that we can at least gain a little more understanding than we have now of our membership.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. That's right. I'm looking at census data right now as a way to report to the commission in the coming months.
Yeah. May I?
Please. Yeah, go ahead, Jane.
I really appreciate that you are chomping at the bit to get that information, and so much appreciate Commissioner Kaplan, who always is so sensitive to issues like this. I guess for a minute, I would like the commission to just join me in the feeling that I have when I see data supplied for, quote, certain segments of our population, and I see nothing that is comparable in terms of the kind of detail to even allow us with respect to race and ethnicity. So if we're talking about interventions and we have nothing in front of us or little in front of us, and by the way, this is an issue that's not just limited to this particular presentation. Very often, if you just pay attention to corporations, for example, they may be able to explain disparities as it relates to gender, but not race. The data is not always rich, and I just hope you join me for a moment, because we are very much here and present. And many of us say that we're data driven and that we shouldn't lead with our heart, but we should lead with data. And I'm one of these people who leads with my heart. But if I had the data, I certainly would push harder with the data. But if I don't have the data, how can I even build allies or work with others who care about this issue? So I'm just imploring us to step up. And, you know, Margaret, I can see in you, just by your presentation, your sensitivity and your desire to get that information as much as I want it. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no, concur, Jane, and appreciate you speaking up eloquently and impactfully. So I think the commissioners are hearing it and the staff are hearing it. And, you know, we are at least I can appreciate how hard the efforts are being made. And so they might not be as fast as you'd like, but they're there and you are keeping us focused on it. So appreciate that.
And
Chris,
if I could just add one item there, just to say that, and I may have mentioned this at the last meeting, if I did forgive me, but to me, it feels like we're at a moment on this specific issue. We're at a lot of moments in our society right now, but we're at a moment on this specific issue where you have just a cascade of interest in this specific topic about data. In Massachusetts, we have the Health Policy Commission, laser focused on it. The Attorney General's office, laser focused on it. I want you to hear that we are laser focused on it. I know the Connector did a presentation recently on their equity framework, which had a data lens to it. So it does feel to me like there's a real opportunity. This has been an issue for a long time. The paucity of race, ethnicity, and language data. I remember hearing about it when I was at Harvard Pilgrim almost 10 years ago. But it feels like things are aligning where we can really do something substantive here, and we are fully committed to it.
No, thanks, Matt. I think we have one other question before we can move on. Christy?
Thanks, Valerie. I'm just curious, why is it like that the other column? Is that just people declining to provide that information, or is it a failure to gather? I'm just really curious about the why.
So it's not, going back to the last slide, you see the absolute numbers. The other is likely going to be biracial people with an infection. That's small numbers. Sorry, I'm going to take a breath. It's small numbers. So when you divide by the census data for those in the other column, the rate is pretty high. And it's the unknown that I'm really concerned about, not the other. Does that answer your question? Does that help?
But why the unknown?
Why is the unknown so large, you're saying?
Yeah. Right. Okay, good question. So
why don't we have the data? I think that's the question.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Okay, so I want to speak to, again, the fact that this is data collected by the Department of Public Health. In short, I think that there's not a rigorous mechanism in place to collect this data because it would go from, I believe the doctors would need to collect it or the health plans, and currently that's not part of the intake process. The CDC did issue a directive to collect race ethnicity data, and I think that's probably why we have 2/3 of it, as pertains to COVID especially. I think that's why we have 2/3 of it, but it's just not picked up at the site of care or at the health plan level, unfortunately. So there are some, there are some pressure points in the system that there needs to be some more pressure there to get that data in quickly.
All right, are we good? Jane, you have your hand up. Do you have another comment, or is that an old hand?
No, I'm just delighted to hear other commissioners ask questions. Because, I'm at the age and stage that, as far as not having this data, this has gone on for hundreds of years. I mean, it's gone on in the last 10 years. We have, right now, Black people dying at alarming rates, much disproportionately to whites, for example. We know that data. But when we're trying to really break down the data in more granular form so we can understand a bigger picture, how it affects people of color, the data is always, you always wind up feeling that we're just second class, that we'll get to it later after we do the important data. And that's the feeling that I'm talking about. And I would love somebody to tell me that I'm wrong or I shouldn't feel this way, but that's, in all honesty, that's the way it feels. It just feels like there is no real coordinated, aggressive effort to be able to be in a position, if we put up information by sex, that we can similarly do that with people of color. I find it very difficult to understand it, and I'm trying my best to contain myself because it's just hard. It's just very difficult. And, here I am asking the question, but feeling that, I hear you say that we'll make it a priority and we will, be aggressive in getting it. But I've been around long enough to hear similar refrains just like that by good-hearted people, and still nothing changes. Nothing changes. So,
Well, Jane,
I want to believe that a change is going to come. And in this case, I would just love to have the data so we could analytically and use our minds to think about, well, what is it that we can do as a body? And without that data, frankly, I think it makes it much more difficult for us to build the kind of understanding and shared understanding and even the allyship that we need to deal with very difficult issues. And
yeah. So I think, Jane, I can speak for myself. I'm hearing you. And one thing for Margaret and the GIC to undertake is to come up with a plan with the health plans, with the US Census. When are you going to get it? And then execute on it, because, dreams are goals with deadlines, right? And so we keep dreaming that we're going to get this information, but we don't have a deadline. So I'd ask you to take that under advisement, and knowing that it is a challenge to get the data, but when are we going to do it? So if we put a stake in the ground that by March or April or May, this is the plan, this is how we're going to get there, and report out on the progress, I think that will potentially be more impactful to all, but certainly, Jane, we're showing you that we're making actionable efforts to move in that regard.
And I appreciate it. I really appreciate it. And forgive me for showing my own emotion.
So, no, I think it's good. Thank you. We need courageous conversations like you're providing us, Jane, to move us forward. So let's see if Margaret can come up with some dates, working with a lot of constituents, so it's not entirely in her control, and we know that. Hey, Adam, it looks like you have a hand up as well.
Thank you, Valerie. I just wanted to vocalize my support for everything Jane has been saying. Speaking from my perspective as a local government executive, we have two major focuses and priorities right now, outside or above everything else we normally do on a daily basis, and that's the COVID-19 pandemic and its racial justice, equity, and inclusion. And to echo what Jane has said, I think the care, the understanding, and the desire to get there is clearly there from the GIC leadership. But I do think clearly and specifically focusing on this as a priority and being able to collect, analyze, and report back on this data should be a top priority.
Thank you.
With a concrete date, though. So that's what I want to, what date are we going to? And then even if we're only 75% there on that date, at least we have, a stake in the ground on, how do we get this information so that we can have actionable interventions.
Thank you.
Yeah. So good conversation. What I value about this commission. So let's see if we can move along and get some votes, because we do need to do that as well. So you have the floor. Is that Denise?
Hi there. Good morning, everyone.
Hi, Denise.
Hi there. So I will kick us off in this section. We're going to talk about the preliminary assessment as to where we are with the expected aggregate increase. And Vince Kane will cover the details on that. Next slide, please. You can click this so that the animation goes all the way through, Janine. Thank you. So just a reminder as to the process that we follow with respect to developing rates. We are obviously at step 1, where we're looking at status quo pricing, and that is what the overall aggregate increase looks like at this point in time with no changes to plan design or movement of members. We'll follow this up in January with a presentation to the Commission of any proposed benefit plan changes that we might be recommending. In February, the Commission will vote on those changes if there are any. And then in March, early March, we will come to you and ask you to vote on the proposed rates by plan. So that's where we are, and that's the process we're following. The governor releasing the budget. We'll see. But go ahead and next slide, please. And I'll turn it over to Vince here to talk about the process for developing the expected aggregate increase. Vince?
Thanks, Denise, and good morning, Chair Sullivan and commissioners. So I work with the Willis Towers Watson team to collect all of the plan experience in order to develop the working rates, or what we call the full cost premiums, for all the GIC plan offerings for the upcoming fiscal year. So this year we're tasked with coming up with FY22 rates by plan and product, which has been especially challenging, obviously, due to the pandemic and the impact it has had on the historical claims experience that we use to do our forecasting. So, with a lot of consideration and analysis, and this is a common approach that a lot of underwriting teams and actuarial teams have been using, we kind of backed up that experience period to before the pandemic. So we're looking at claims experience that doesn't reflect the claim suppression that we experienced last spring and some of the recoupment of pent-up demand subsequent to that, as well as the direct claims for COVID infections for GIC members. So in doing so, we project forward pretty much through the pandemic period and come up with an estimate of 5.8% for the GIC products and plans. Now that represents an average. I remember last year, Joan, having a sort of metaphor to a batting average for a baseball team. So on average, it's 5.8%, but some people are hitting 100 and others are hitting 350. The 5.8% represents an average across all the non-Medicare and the Medicare plans. So it's not complete, it's not final. This is preliminary work. It does not reflect plan design changes yet. And as it stands now, some of the plans have expected increases that are below sort of a low end of 4% that we're putting in this range here in the middle of the chart. And some are higher than what we're showing as the high end number at 7%. Some of the reasons why it's not settled as of yet is that we're still working out expected rebates for FY22 for the pharmacy benefit plan managers, so ESI and CVS. And we're also conducting a market check for what amounts to year 4 of the contracts with ESI and CVS, which could produce some additional savings to drive the average increase down. At the top of this timeline or I guess range of increases, there's a market number. And what we're generally seeing is trends off of pre-COVID experience that would be between 5 and 7%. So the typical full premium increases that we would see if experience had emerged as expected in all of the modeling would be something in that range of 5 to 7. And the GIC low end is lower than what we're calling the market benchmark. So what we're hoping for is something closer to 4 overall. That's lower than the market benchmark low end of 5%. So I'll stop there and see if anyone has any questions about the content on this slide.
Yeah, no, thanks, Vince. I'm not thrilled to see the aggregate increase there. But I'm glad that we're talking about it. I see that Anna has her hand up, so I'll let Anna go, and then Eileen, and then we'll see who else has questions. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. I had it's almost a clarification question. So just to rephrase, what I hear is that you are basically modeling the increase with the status quo plans, also assuming no COVID. So prior to COVID. And I was just wondering if this is all based on your internal models, or whether you've also had conversations with insurers, carriers, as to how they're planning on pricing for the next year. And are they also adopting this sort of assume the world was before COVID and we're going to price based on those assumptions, or are they incorporating COVID into their pricing?
Yeah, so I can speak to what our process is, but not what the health plans might be doing, for example, for their fully insured books of business, the state Division of Insurance. But in our modeling, what we've done is requested claims data from each of the health plans and indicated to them that our intention was to project forward from this claims period before the pandemic hit in early 2020 and project forward to FY22, which begins this July 1st. So part of that data request was to ask for trend assumptions by plan. So they provided the unit cost, the expected utilization components and mix that kind of aggregate to a total inflationary trend assumption that we use to project that experience forward. We revisited those assumptions with them last month to see if anything unique had emerged that would warrant a change in the assumptions. And there was nothing material at that time. Now, the general sort of approach has been to acknowledge that, yes, there, if you did that claims period forward to GIC's end of FY20 and FY21, there would be a big dip in the expected claims and then, a sort of a peak. The general consensus is that over the course of the 2 fiscal years, and for a lot of our clients, the 2 calendar years, 20 and 21, that the overall claims will be lower than what it would have been otherwise due to the pandemic. So we have not put any explicit adjustments for sort of residual recoupment of pent-up demand into FY22, which might increase this further, nor have we forecasted sort of any long-term effects that might emerge with regard to our healthcare delivery system, changes in the site of care, shifts to telehealth or other sort of levers, because there's just too much uncertainty as to what the future state of our healthcare delivery system will look like next fiscal year. So in that sense, we've kind of treated it as though the pandemic, didn't exist. Of course, that would be wonderful. And this is kind of what the sort of counterfactual increase would be for FY22. I hope that answers your question.
It does. I'm curious if you've thought about modeling sort of a best case and worst case, sort of trying to include COVID. So the worst case of the pent up demand coming back, and then the best case of it sort of being minimized and not having.
We had done some initial work with the GIC and in support of administration and finance to look at sort of some scenario modeling. In that scenario modeling only extended into FY21. So it acknowledged that there was a big decrease in expected claims at the end of FY20, expected upticks in 21. Those FY21 impacts would sort of be a function of secondary or tertiary waves of infection and what the level of suppressed care might be with those secondary waves. In coming up with FY22, we're hoping, fingers crossed, that a lot of that is resolved by July 1, but we know there'll probably still be some pent-up demand for people getting out and seeking care, after the vaccinations roll out. We haven't explicitly put that into our projections.
Makes sense.
Go ahead, Eileen.
Thank you. And my question follows closely to Anna's, and I guess I was just wondering about the assumptions in using data or trying to model from the pre-COVID days. While it's understandable why you're taking that approach, to me, it makes those assumptions less credible or less reliable in the sense that I for one, don't believe we're going to return to the world of pre-COVID. I think in a lot of areas, healthcare is probably one of them, and it doesn't have to do just with pent-up demand. I think people are certainly more aware of hygiene and social distancing, and the hope is that you may see, less flu or less of those communicable diseases as a result. But I think telehealth, as we talked about, may potentially change. And so to me, it doesn't feel like we're going to return to the pre-COVID world. And so I think we have to be cognizant of that as we rely on some of these assumptions.
It's a really good point, Eileen and Anna. And I want to take that back to, because as we walk through these findings internally with Willis over the course of the last couple of months, it does feel a little unsatisfactory to just not account for COVID in any way, given, I understand why we've taken this approach here, especially as a first look at the data, but it being, there will be additional looks at the data, and I think it behooves us to at least do some forward-looking scenario planning, or best case, worst case scenario, as Anna put it, relative to COVID's impact. It will be a hard exercise, I'm sure. It will put the actuaries' assumption development to the test, but it's good feedback from the commission, and we'll take that back and think it through.
All right, Bobby, it looks like you have your hand
Yes.
up. But
Yes.
yeah, good.
I'm sorry. Did you want to go forward? I know you
No.
do.
So I just want to make sure we get to the votes. I think we can move other things on the agenda. So
Okay.
just let's all be cognizant of that. But obviously, I don't want to stop anyone from having input into this meeting. That's why we're here. So go ahead, Bobby.
All right. I'll make it quick, which is that basically I echo what my fellow commissioners have stated, that I was very surprised that the increase, or the expected increase, did not include COVID. We cannot pretend that it's here, and it may be here. It's not going to be eradicated. And I think that it has to be included, because otherwise we're going to be shocked by whatever the actual increase is. That doesn't make any sense to me. So that's all.
Yeah, I think it's all good comments. And I know we're trying to juggle uncertainty within that. And it's never easy to deal with uncertainty, but just pretending it doesn't exist is probably not a good go forward path.
Let me just say one comment here. We're not ignoring it. We're not pretending it doesn't exist. I think we are at the preliminary stage in the process where we are making a series of assumptions here, and we can adjust those assumptions. I would say we wanted to start with our best shot of what we can reasonably predict. I hear the feedback that we need to do a better job of doing some reasonable predictions or scenario modeling for COVID-19, which we will certainly take back. We will likely learn more even over just the next month, certainly over the process of the next several months as we develop final rates. And we have plenty of opportunity to layer that analysis and thinking into our process going forward.
All right, well, good, but let's keep moving forward. Denise, you have the floor.
Just to provide some context, Matt, I think you have spoken about what the DOI has seen in terms of the commercial market actually being much higher than these estimates. So just for a little bit of context, this estimate is actually not out of line. It's lower than what commercial markets are seeing. So in reference to Anna's question, the book of business for the plans outside of the GIC for the commercial marketplace is in the range of 7%. So this is not out of line with kind of what we're seeing in the marketplace. And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I wonder if Vince could speak to the market benchmarks that he's provided on the spectrum there to help frame this up.
Yeah, sure. These are expected increases for the full cost premium rates based on Willis Towers Watson survey data for large self-funded clients. It's mostly commercial, not public, not like the GIC, and it's reflects sort of an average, right? So it varies from year to year based on the survey responses that we get, but it does reflect sort of a commercial expectation for the calendar year. Now, that doesn't mean that they pass through these increases in the form of contributions. That has been sort of a consideration for a number of our clients and plan sponsors, whether to pass through the expected full cost premium increase in the form of contribution increases. And for the GIC, those are legislated contributions. So to answer your question, Denise, it's based off Willis Towers Watson survey responses.
And let me just add one item too, which is that Denise referenced the approved rates for the merged market in Massachusetts being in the mid to high 7s. Now those are based on, so it's fully insured business by carriers who have fully insured business. And Vince, I'm no actuary, I don't even play one on TV, so you can back me up on this, but carriers and actuaries price uncertainty with an additive to premium rates, right? And if there's one thing we know about the impact of COVID looking forward, and we are actually looking forward through the end of our next fiscal year, which is, a year from this coming July. So we're trying to peer forward into a very uncertain environment here. So the alternative here is to add additional burden to the expected aggregate increase to accommodate for uncertainty. And we didn't want to start with that. Now we may, through our scenario planning, need to do that. It could move it up, it could move it down, depending on the scenarios. But I think what you're seeing here is there's a lot of things, but not least of which is trying to price for what is as uncertain as you can come up with. Sorry, that wasn't particularly cogent, but.
Yeah, no, I think it's a hard issue, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't address it.
Yes.
So let's keep moving on. All good stuff. Denise, I think it's still your agenda item.
So actually, that's the end of this. We'll move into the second item on procurement, but I just want to make sure that folks know that that's the end of the presentation around the expected aggregate increase. And we'll be back with you in our January meeting with some more data here and some more information about any plan design changes that we as a commission want to consider.
Okay. Thank you. Toby, I saw you had your hand up and then it came down. Do you have a comment or a question, or did it get addressed?
If I may, please?
Yes, go ahead.
Given the uncertainty in the environment and also kind of where you stand on the rate development, it would seem to me that when you come forth at the next meeting with the plan design changes, there kind of have to be buckets of saying, here's some aggressive ones, here's some tinkering, here's some none ones, because those rates, in my mind, pretty high. Also, unless my memory is failing me, which could be the case, I think every year we've been marching up as a percentage increase. And that's not sustainable, number one. Number two, it's not right. So, I just think we got to have a package of things to consider when it comes in, and it doesn't make your job any easier, Matt, but I just think that's where we're at. So
yeah, no, I appreciate that, Toby, and that is the point of the exercise to come. I guess I would just temper expectations that our ability to make large moves in these numbers based on plan design changes between procurements is limited. We will certainly bring some to you, and they will be in the buckets that you propose. And my suggestion is that some of the other dynamics or work still to do that was noted in that earlier slide are likely to move the number more and hopefully down more than proposed plan design changes. I think we just need to be sanguine about how much we can move the needle with plan design changes.
Right. I just want it with a little bit of history. I just wanted people to understand that number, but it may not end up there, but it's gone up every year as a percentage.
Yes, yeah, that's a good point, and that is true. Over the last several years, it's been trending in this direction.
Yeah, we had a 0% year, and that was not realistic. That was a one-time event. But then 3, and then here we go. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Toby. On to Cameron McBean.
Okay. Well, good morning, commissioners. I'm here to provide an update on our recently completed dental and vision procurement. If we could move along to the next slide. Just to level set and remind everyone of where things currently stand. MetLife is our dental provider for non-union active members as well as retirees. They're in the 4th year of their dental contract, and Davis Vision is in the final year of our self-funded vision contract. The bottom half of the slide shows the timeline of the procurement calendar. We worked with Boston Benefit Partners yet again on this procurement. Began in late August and wrapped up just before Thanksgiving. Next slide, please. So the results of the procurement are that the GIC sourcing team recommends that we maintain the incumbent carriers, MetLife for dental, as well as Davis Vision. We are going to see reduced premiums for both active and retiree members, continuing with MetLife, as well as some benefit enhancements, particularly with regards to the retirees. They're going to be bumping up the amount paid for some of the most common procedures amongst our retiree population. So it's a small increase overall or it's rather than a broad increase across everything. We did try to target that, or in partnership with MetLife, to account for the procedures that would provide the most benefit to the greatest number of participants. We also got a reduction in our administrative service fee from Davis, as well as some other benefit enhancements. So between that and the other details in the scoring recommendation memo that I believe everyone should have received, that's what led us to recommend that we stick with the incumbent carriers. Next slide, please. And this just shows what the total fiscal year 22 premiums will be compared to the current year. Now, this does not represent, of course, the actual premiums paid by our membership, which can vary depending on their hire date, although it would be accurate for the retiree populace who pays 100% of their dental premiums. So at this point, if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I don't see any questions by commissioners. I hope I'm not squelching participation because I'm focused on time. So I'll pause there to see if there's any other questions before I request a motion. Okay, well, not
It looks
seeing
like
any-
Bobby may have a question.
Yes, of course.
Oh.
Sorry, I was somewhat restricted by your, yes, I just wanted to say. However, only deterred for a brief moment.
Okay, good. I wouldn't want that to be long lasting.
So I just have a question regarding in what areas, I guess, are the benefit increases? I'm curious because active employees who are considering retirement always want to know what because they receive union, dental and optical insurance. They always want to know what the benefits in what areas. So I'm curious which services are the increases for benefits?
I would have to go back and check their bid response. I don't unfortunately recall that off the top of my head and don't have it immediately handy. But they were services like receiving an implant for a missing tooth or getting a crown put on. So if under the retirement plan, if a common procedure like that, the retiree plan was paying $750, now it would probably be paying somewhere in the neighborhood of $800.
Okay. So yeah, if we could have that, I'd be very curious which services
Certainly, I'll pass that along after the meeting.
Have increased. Thank you. Thanks. And is this for in-network strictly? Like, is there an in-network and out-of-network of these?
The retiree plan pays the same dollar amount regardless of whether or not you see an in-network provider. The benefit to utilizing an in-network provider is that the provider is restricted from charging anything over the contracted amount.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Bobby. I like that you keep us honest, so I don't want to squelch that enthusiasm ever. So I don't see other hands up though, and I'm being patient to see them. But in the interest of time, I will request a motion to approve the MetLife and Davis Vision as the apparent successful bidders for dental and vision benefits, and then move to the next highest scoring bidder if contracting is unsuccessful. So I have this motion out there. Do I have?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
So Bobby and Christy, thank you. So I will hand it over to our general counsel for a roll call.
Chair Sullivan,
Aye.
Commissioner Kaplan,
Aye.
Designee Roeder,
Aye.
Designee Butler,
Aye.
Commissioner Chabot,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapdelaine,
Aye.
Commissioner Choate,
Yes.
Commissioner Clenard,
Aye.
Commissioner Davis,
Aye.
Commissioner Edmonds,
Aye.
Commissioner McEnany,
Aye.
Commissioner Jennings,
Aye.
Commissioner Murphy Rodriguez,
Yes.
Commissioner Sinenko,
Aye.
and Commissioner Timothy Sullivan.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
I can take just a moment, Madam Chair, to acknowledge the work of the procurement team, in particular Denise and Cameron and Janine Dewar. from Denise's team and the rest of the procurement team for the work that they've put into this. Thank you.
Oh, good. All right, great. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate everyone's work on this. So let's move on to regulations. And I know, Andrew, this is fascinating work for you and for us. So thanks for pushing this forward.
Thank you. We can go to the next slide. I have to thank Council Mark. I don't think he's on actually with us, but Mark Tuttle has done a tremendous amount of work to get this done. As you know, we had our public hearings on November 10th. We had almost no attendance, and even though we kept the comment period open, we had very few comments. We had the two comments that are identified on the slide. One was about municipal data being provided after a municipality has left the GIC, and the other was one that Mike Berry had noted we had talked about it but had failed to do, which was to add town managers to the list of people who could ask for data from municipalities, which reflects an amendment to the statute. In addition, we had received feedback from the registry division on the proposed regulations, and they include things like about numbering, putting section numbers in, things like that, just those kind of changes. So we've incorporated all of those, and now we are ready to move forward. Can we go to the next slide, please? The changes, the only substantive change is the 128.065, which adds the town manager, and there was a mistake in the draft. We had intended to change 60 days to 30, and it had been 30 instead of 60, so we fixed that, and essentially that's the only substantive change since you saw them initially. And we can move on to the vote. At this point, I ask that you approve the amendments as drafted and authorize us to move forward now with the finalization and promulgation. These will not be final until they are published in the Mass Register. And there's a process we have to go through before that can happen. And so I need your authority to continue on and move forward.
Do I have someone who wants to make?
Under discussion, maybe we could just, we should probably just ask if anybody has any questions on it.
Thank you, Matt. Sorry.
That's all right.
Yeah, I mean, we have been talking about these regulations for a while, and Andrew has shepherded it through the commission. It would appear that you've followed all of the appropriate processes as outlined by the state. Seems like you had some help in it. Is there any discussion? I think it cleans up our regulations as a state agency. And so if there's no discussion, I will entertain a motion to move forward.
So moved.
Second.
So at this point, I will hand it over to our general counsel to take a roll call, starting with me,
Chair.
which is yes, Andrew.
Thank you. Commissioner Kaplan,
Yes.
Designee Roeder,
Yes.
Designee Butler,
Yes.
Commissioner Shabbat,
Yes.
Commissioner Chapdelaine,
Yes.
Commissioner Choate,
Yes.
Commissioner Clenard,
Yes.
Commissioner Davis,
Aye.
Commissioner Edmonds,
Aye.
Commissioner McEnany,
Aye.
Commissioner Jennings,
Aye.
Commissioner Murphy Rodriguez,
Yes.
Commissioner Sinenko,
Aye.
and Commissioner Sullivan.
Yes.
It passes unanimously. I thank you all, and when we have a clean final version, I will send them to all commissioners so you have them for your records.
Madam Chair, again, just a point of personal privilege, if it's okay. I want to thank Andrew and Mark Tuttle for their work on this. It's all gone very smoothly, and also some folks from the technical team who assisted in virtual hearing. It was a good test run for the coming listening sessions. So Maureen Quinn, Janine Hines, Nick Vogler for all of their work to make that happen. Thank you.
Nice. Thank you. So let's move on. We've got little less than 25 minutes. I do like to hear about the modernization efforts. I don't think we'd be where we were to support our members without these initiatives being put in place last year, and who would have known? So thank you, Paul and John. The floor is yours.
Okay, Janine, could you go to the next slide, please? And the next one as well. So we just want to do a recap of the project last year and the results that came from that project, and then give you a little bit of a preview of where we're heading with the project this year. And in the interest of time, we'll kind of breeze through some of this, but when we started this out, we had a bunch of principles that we wanted to address for the agency, some of the things that we've talked over the years with our subscribers, and we wanted to become more modern is really the key piece on this slide right here. Modern and efficient. And if you can go to the next slide, please. And so when we were doing that, we actually started to go through, okay, what do we really want to do to accomplish those goals, and what are our goals? And so here were the main goals of that first project. As you'll see, they all kind of intertwine together. If you look at reliance on paper and customer satisfaction, I think that you could probably ask anyone. No one wants to deal with paper, including the people in the internal staff at the GIC, and to create more modern and efficient processes in the meantime. We also did the project thinking about taxpayer money and our time as well. We pulled this project off for $750,000, which is pretty amazing when you see the results we'll be showing you. And also, it was the first step in this process that we envisioned as an incremental project where it would have multiple steps trying to get to the most modern application that we could have. And so that first piece that we did last year was laying the foundation for moving forward into the following phases, where we would get a little bit more self-service for our subscribers. The next slide, please. So if you look at the components of the system that we put in place last year, we have the Magic eligibility system for the past few years that was put into 2017. It was brand new, custom made. And then what we did last year was we created something called My GIC Link. Janine, you can power through the rest of this screen. And so My GIC Link, if you can go back, yeah. It was made up of a Salesforce component for a workflow for all of the applications and forms that subscribers filled in to go through that workflow and enable us not to have to use paper any longer. Can you go further? And so this is kind of what happened as a result of that. And Paul, do you want to chime in here, since this is really what happened in the operations area?
Sure. Thanks, John. Well, we just want to demonstrate here some reminders about, we were set efforts forward to improve the customer experience. We have online populated forms. Members could submit forms electronically to GIC. And one big improvement is staff had immediate access to anything that was sent in, rather than wait for the delay of the mail, receiving it, coming into our data entry unit. So staff had immediate access to anything that was submitted by our members. So Jeannie, if you go to the next slide. We just want to give you some statistics here. One of the great things about the My GIC link is that it provides a lot of dashboards so that we can monitor the progress of the work both monthly, daily, and yearly. To give you an idea here, what we've put together is this is all of our enrollment forms that we receive from all of our members, coordinators, and even correspondence from our members. Put it in perspective, from January 1st through December 4th, we were processed 106,360 applications through the MyGIC Link system. And since we went remote on March 19th, we were able to process 93,000 applications. So if you go forward, Janine. This here, what this does is gives us an insight onto how long it takes to process an application. The average day is 6.7 to process the applications we receive. Now that's not true for all of our applications. Depending on what the member is submitting to us, some of it's pretty straightforward. It can be done in process in hours, such as, you have retirement, address changes, email updates, and stuff like that. And then there are some complicated forms that need follow-up or verification from our members. But overall, we can see by unit the average time to process an application, which is 6.7 days. The next one, Janine. What we did here, for those of you who remember, we rolled out a credit card system on May 4th, and we thought we'd share some statistics to date on the credit card system. So from May 4th through December 4th, we've processed 6,174 transactions through our credit card system, totaling $1.89 million in premium. The next slide, Janine. As John mentioned before, this is an exciting time for us. We're entering into this phase 2. Some of the key objectives here is we want to stand up some member portal so that members can go online and, rather than submit applications as they've done, be able to answer a series of questions and make elections to send the benefits over to GIC. This next phase has a lot of integration with our MAGIC eligibility system. So when you stand up a portal, you have to remember that when a member logs in, they're going to want to be able to see what they're enrolled in today and what the benefits are in the future. So unlike submitting applications to us under the MyGIC link today, we have to build a lot of integration between our eligibility system and the Salesforce platform. We continue to evolve the business environment and improve the day-to-day processing through the MyGIC link. And naturally, we want members to be informed, make informed decisions, and provide as much data we can to the members. The next slide. Some of the things we've accomplished to date, pretty straightforward. We've put together some communication and training timelines for both the coordinators, particularly around GIC staff, and how we're going to roll this stuff out to the members. We do know that due to the complexity of our eligibility and of the many different payroll systems that we deal with, and we're going to do a phased rollout late spring for this portal, so that we know that it worked with our MyGIC link. You just can't turn a system on with this much complexity for everybody all at once. So we want to have a phased rollout where we can control, monitor any issues, and if anything should go wrong, that we're able to pull it back and continue on and make some improvements. Where we are now is we put together some business workflows and some mock-up designs that we're going to be showing you on the next couple of slides. And naturally, we want to make sure that we understand that it's going to integrate with the MAGIC system. And as with anything that we stand up, security is, extremely important when you put out something where you put in information for the members and all of their engagement with the collaboration. We're going to put in a security system, with EOTS to make sure it stands up to what we need. So Janine, if you go the next one. What this here is, we just want to demonstrate, I apologize, it's a little difficult to read, but it sort of gives you a picture over the last 2 months what we've been doing. We have about 30 of these flowcharts that have come into play for this system. This is just one of our events. We refer to as marriage as a qualifying event, but this is just to demonstrate the complexity of the eligibility and what's behind the system to bring it forth to process a qualifying event due to marriage. So we have about 30 of these that we've been working on the last 2 months.
I just want to jump in here for a second, and I do want to mention that each one of these workflows that have been put together have been put together with the expertise of the operations staff and how all of these things actually coming from a normal process that we handle on the Magic system over time and trying to put it in the context of actual user interface that will be on a portal. I really do want to applaud Paul Murphy and Donna Wortman. They spent an incredible amount of time putting these things together and picking their brains for all of this. It's really been amazing. So.
No, I echo that as well. I know there's a lot of detail here, and it's really good work, Paul and Donna. So thank you.
Thank you, John. And John and I are still on speaking terms so far in this project, so that's a good sign. So if we go to the next slide. What we have here is a couple of slides that we put together, and John, feel free to chime in. These are just templates of some of the screens that we've put together. They're still in draft. They're subject to change based on how we want to move forward and what we want to roll out to the members. But, you know, we're going to roll out a register page where a member gets to go in with a PIN number and register to go into the portal. The next slide. This is a landing page which we have designed so that, you know, it gives you an idea on where you are when you log in as a member. One up above, you'll see that, you know, as a member, you're not enrolled, you're a new hire. You click on the button, you can enroll in benefits today. It has some helpful links to the different websites and particularly around the member's profile and what they're enrolled in. So one thing we do know is we want to stand up some notification to members, some things that are outstanding, deadlines that they have to meet, or missing material, so that these will be personalized and put into the member so that when the member goes in, they get to see what is outstanding and what they need to provide. The next one, Janine. What we put here is basically so members can have a shopping tool. The benefit decision guide we know is extremely important to people. It provides a lot of data, but what we want to put here is members will have the capability to, on the left-hand side, search for a particular product and look at the details in monthly premium for that product. Or on the right side, pick a number of products available to them where they reside, and then they can do a compare.
Yeah,
Oh,
one of
that's
the
fabulous.
I was just going to jump in here for a second and mention that typically in the benefit decision guides and any of our paper products or even the ones that are on the mass.gov website, they're not individualized, that they actually, you know, just to handle the general public. And so when they get into compare plans in here, it'll actually be more unique to the person and where they live and what's available to them. So.
Okay, Janine, on the next one. Again, this just gives you a demonstration of comparing plans when you select the plans. And the next one is basically gives a summary for the member on what they've elected through the portal, what they've enrolled in. They get to click on the benefit and view the detail, monthly premium, and contact information about the plan, etc. So we will give a confirmation of what they've enrolled in, and they can save this under their profile.
So, hey, Paul, like you can hear how excited everybody is, even if we're all on video. Are you going to show these slides at the virtual listening sessions and show people how they have these new options? And two, is it going to be mandatory that everybody goes in to make their selection for open enrollment this year, or only those who want to make a change?
Well, one of the stages we're in right now is we have to stand up a product in late spring. We're looking right now at possibly a new hire rollout by a phased implementation. And then when the member is in there to be able to adjust qualifying events. Annual enrollment is still on the table right now. It's a huge ask to have everyone in on an annual enrollment for 240,000 members. So most likely we won't have the system on for everybody for annual enrollment, but we will have some type of portal available to a segment of our population. You know, part of the issue and challenges we have is we have online, offline payroll systems in which online, we have a lot of the data where members can go in and collect and enroll. But some of our entities, such as all of our quasi-agencies and municipalities, we don't know about new hires unless we receive paper. So some of those challenges we still have to work out, but it remains to be seen on how we move forward with this. But again, we do want to roll out something for the members. So I think that was a little quick, but
No, I think it's good stuff. I appreciate where we're at. I think we're running out of time. So Jim, I think we're going to ask you, since all the commissioners had the slides ahead, if we can go to the audit results, if we have our speaker do this in 10 minutes, is that appropriate?
Sure. Michelle Sokar was here from the Claims Administration, CTI, to present the audits of the plans.
Okay.
My budget slides are there for you to look at. As you know, I'm available anytime if people have questions or comments, and there'll be another update in January. So feel free to look at those slides and let us know if you have any questions. But otherwise, I'll turn it over to CTI to present the plan audits.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you, Jim. Good morning. My name is Michelle Suko, and I am with Claim Technologies Incorporated, located in Des Moines, Iowa. Earlier this year, we audited 3 of your health administrators, Always Health Partners, Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare, and Tufts Health Plan. I want to take a pause and just acknowledge the flexibility, responsiveness, and cooperation of each of these 3 administrators. These audits were scheduled to take place on site in March and early April, right when COVID hit. And these administrators reacted very quickly and allowed us to keep these audits on schedule and move from an on-site audit to virtual audits. So kudos to all 3 administrators. We greatly appreciated their flexibility and creativeness to allow these audits to maintain their timeline. The goals of our medical audits are listed on this slide, and in the interest of time, I will not go through each one. Basically, we want to make sure that claims are being processed correctly according to contract terms, identify if there are any processes that might present opportunities for improvement. Next slide, please. The audit components for a CTI comprehensive audit are listed on this page. 2 that I want to make sure that you understand the difference are the first 2. The first component is a random sample audit of 200 claims per administrator. And I want to assure you that this is a statistically valid random sample. This does give you 95% plus or minus 3% confidence rate. We do have a statistician, Dr. Gardner, who reviews all of our recommendations and our auditing protocols and has in writing certified that this was a statistically valid sample for the GIC. It is purely random, unlike the next bullet point. The 100% electronic screening with 150 targeted samples is not random. We have a number of algorithms in place that we run all claims data through. Additionally, we set up the GIC benefits, excluded benefits, limited benefits, copay deductible, etc. Any deviations popped out on a report, and we targeted 150 of those claims with each administrator. The remaining 3 components, I won't spend a lot of time on. Again, the purpose of these remaining 3 components is just to validate administrators have appropriate processes and procedures in place, as well as cost containment protocols to benefit the GIC. Next slide, please. This slide is really a summary slide showing each of the 3 administrators and by administrator which plan or plans were audited. You can see the total paid, total number of processed, and median turnaround time. All 3 administrators were around 7 to 8 days median turnaround time. And you can see that Tufts Health Plan, for the plans that we audited, paid the most claims in terms of dollars as well as claim volume. Next slide, please. This slide is really meant to show you how your administrators are doing. There is no industry standard with regard to administrator performance, and therefore CTI developed our own benchmarking that you are seeing in this slide to show you and compare your administrators' performance not only against each other, but against the last 100 audits that we performed. This slide represents the performance of the last 100, and that median right in the middle is the point at which 50 administrator performance is above and 50 are below. We then took those 50 and broke down further into quartiles with 25 administrators per quartile. Quartile 1 is the lowest, quartile 4 is the highest. As you look at this slide, our goal is to get all of your administrators' key performance indicators above the median. Next slide, please. Key findings with Always. We have their financial accuracy listed as well as 14 claims that caused a payment error. You can see the breakdown between the overpayments and the underpayments. 9 of those 14 errors were due to copay application, of which 7 were automatically adjudicated. Key findings in terms of the 100% electronic screening. We found potential incorrect copayments. Some emergency room copayments were charged when they should have been waived. In-stage renal disease, you will see this pop up on another administrator's key findings. Both administrators are relying solely on the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services website to determine member eligibility for Medicare's Parts A and B. A best practice or a better practice would be doing some member outreach. This is key because after 30 months, Medicare becomes primary. And so it's key to know when Medicare enrollment occurred, when the first date of dialysis occurred, to make sure that you are taking advantage of that Medicare primacy. The bottom recommendation is really kudos to all of you responsible for administering the GIC's eligibility and enrollment. We took your eligibility file and ran it through against all of the paid claims for the audit period, and only 0.16% for Always were paid for people who may not have been covered. Now, I don't want you to be alarmed that this number isn't 0. We never see it at 0. We typically see it at 1 to 2%. There are going to be situations where retroactive changes occur. There are going to be situations where timely notification didn't occur. When benchmarked against what CTI generally sees against the administrators that we audit, the GIC is doing very well. And while this is going to show up on all 3 administrator key findings, I will just be touching on it on this slide. Next slide, please. Harvard-Pilgrim key findings, same format here. You can see their accuracy rate and the breakdown between overpayments and underpayments. The over and underpayments here are larger than what we saw on the prior slide. Key findings for electronic screening, we did see the potential deductible overaccumulation where members were not given deductible and out-of-pocket credits when changing from an individual to a family contract mid-year. We saw potential incorrect co-payments with regard to retroactive tier changes. We saw potential upcoding for chiropractic services. This is another one that you will see on the following slide as well. So this is not a finding that is unique to Harvard-Pilgrim. Next slide, please. Tufts key findings. Again, you can see the breakdown, their financial accuracy rate. Couple of things that show up under the Tufts findings that we haven't previously talked about. Assistant surgeons typically surgeons, assistant surgeons are reduced by 80 to 90% allowance and payment. They are not performing as extensive work as the primary surgeon, therefore the reduction. What we learned from Tufts is that contracted providers are not held to that reduction. We saw out-of-network claims for non-emergency services paid under the Spirit plan. We again saw potential incorrect co-payments, tier 1 co-payments applied to tier 2 hospitals. This is costing the plan because that liability is now the plan liability rather than the member cost share. Lastly, potential excessive drug testing, medical necessity was not required, and claims were not referred to Tufts Fraud Prevention and Recovery Unit. Next slide, please. Other key findings, the one area that I want to be sure and point out here is that manufacturer rebates for prescription drugs purchased under the medical benefit are not always being passed through to the GIC. We typically see specialty pharmacy rebates on the medical side average about 2% of the actual drug costs paid under the medical benefit. Always is not currently collecting rebates. Harvard Pilgrim is collecting rebates, but not passing those through to the GIC. Tufts is the only administrator that we audited that is collecting rebates and passing 100% through to the GIC. The other items, in the interest of time, I'm not going to go through. Our contacts at the GIC are aware and are in agreement, and we will work with the administrators on a post-audit action plan to incorporate these findings. Next slide, please. The next 2 slides are recommendations based upon our findings. Again, in the interest of time, I'm not going to read these. Everything on here has been highlighted on the prior slides. And again, we will be working with our contacts at GIC to help make these recommendations, to help work with the administrators to put a post-audit action plan in place. Let's skip to the last slide. I just want to thank everyone for the opportunity. I know I've given you a very abbreviated version in the interest of time. Any questions before we go?
You did a very nice job summarizing that very quickly. I think the takeaway is our health plans and the staff at the GIC, work well to be in compliance with what our contracts say, but there's always room for improvement. And so we'll be executing on those recommendations, especially the one about Harvard Pilgrim not passing through those rebates. Let's get those rebates, Jim. I see you smile, so more budget for us. All right, thank you. Any questions, commissioners? Any final comments? I see Christy has her hand up.
Well, my question is about the pharmacy rebates. Why would they not be collected and or not passed on? What's the justification for that?
This is really not uncommon. And so the fact that you have 1 out of 3 doing it is better than average. That's 33%. This is something that should be passed on. And this is something that we address as part of our comprehensive audit.
It's also, I just remind you, was that Christy that asked that question? Yeah. These are the findings of the audit. The next step is to go back to the carriers to understand more fully how we ended up here and what were the issues behind the problems that were noted. So we will have more information about that through this next step. That was certainly one issue that that stood out for me as well. At very least, we want to have consistency here among our carriers.
Go ahead, Bobby.
Can we collect those rebates at least for this year, the current year, or can we? I mean, do we have any, let's say, authority to do that or ability to collect what is owed us for this year, but they have not? Or, it's years past, right? What they owe us for, a certain period of time. or we just have to, move on, and make sure they don't do that again.
I think I would.
Usually a contracting, that's usually a contracting issue. Folks at the GIC would need to review your administrative services agreements to determine whether or not those rebates should have been passed along and weren't. And if not, amend the contract accordingly.
Mhm. Right. I would just add, we're going to talk with the plans and look at all our options, probably including, what's available to us to collect them. So I don't think anything's off the table.
Okay, can I just ask you, Michelle, what the amount of the rebates was that they did not pass on to us? What dollar amount?
Sure. Using the 2% that we generally see in the industry and identifying specialty drugs as a particular procedure code with a bill charge of $500 or more. It's not granular, but it's very high level. We found approximately $600,000 would be owed using the 2% for, let me just grab my notes here, for Harvard Pilgrim and approximately $100,000 for Always. And again, we are identifying specialty pharmacy just based off of dollar amount and procedure code. So that's a best guess, but that gives you an approximation.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, always opportunities to evolve our contracting and our ways of administration. So thank you. Nice job getting us through that quickly. Any other comments by staff or commissioners?
I have a question,
Sure.
Valerie. So Jim, if it's contractual, is there a penalty in that contract for people that don't pass this through to the GIC? Is there any kind of a penalty for healthcare not to pass it through for them?
I don't want to speak for, go ahead, Matt, if you want to.
No, I was just going to say it's probably it being a contractual question, probably a question for Andrew.
Right.
Okay.
And at this point, it is somewhat ambiguous under our plan contracts whether that was specifically addressed. This is the first time it's really come up since I've been at the GIC. It's very clear with our pharmacy contracts that we get all the rebates. So this is something that, having seen it raised, will definitely be dealt with in all future contracts. And we've talked about amending the contracts for next year to make sure that this is clear. But we have to meet with the plans and find out what's going on right now.
Yeah,
All right, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for bringing that up, Liz. So if I could make a request by staff to come back and let the commissioners know what the plans say and what the action items are for the next session of contracts, that would be great around this area. So seeing no more hands up, I want to use this time to thank everybody for what has been a remarkable year. Maybe not in the sense that we'd like it to be, but I think the GIC has stepped up, it has become virtual. We're having our meetings virtual. We're in the middle of a snowstorm, and business continued at the GIC. So I want to thank everyone. I want to commend all of us for our resilience and our grit and our ability to keep moving forward despite the pandemic. I want to thank us for having some difficult conversation around race and disparity, and applaud us for having that. And again, I want to just thank the state, the administrators at the state, our governor and his cabinet for doing everything they can to keep us safe and keep us moving forward. I feel very privileged to have a small part in what is happening at the state as the chair. So I wish you a happy holiday season. I thank you for keeping the faith and moving us forward. And we'll see you next year, and we'll address some of these issues So the power vested in me, this meeting is adjourned. Bye, everyone.
Bye.